Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a video all about popular books that I personally hated. But I think hated is kind of a strong word because a lot of these books were like 3 stars for me, but maybe like a lower 3. So I wasn't like super hateful about them. It was just like very neutral to where I was like, why all the hype for this book? You know what I mean? So these are just books that I feel like are really popular that maybe you're considering reading because of the popularity, but you kind of want like a different viewpoint on them. And if you and I share similar reading tastes, or we tend to dislike or like similar things in books, then maybe this video will help you out a little bit. But I do want to mention before I get started is that none of these authors are bad authors. And I want to make that clear. Like sometimes I feel like with these videos, people can be really hateful to authors. And I don't think that any of these authors are necessarily bad. I just think that sometimes their books don't work for a specific person, but I could definitely read like some of these authors' other books and really like them. So I just want to make that clear that I'm not bashing on any of these authors. I just didn't like maybe a specific book that they came out with. And yeah, so I really wanted to say that because I don't think any authors necessarily need like massive amounts of hate, especially in videos like this. So, okay, so the first book is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. So this is one of those books that I didn't hate. Like, this wasn't one of those books where it's like, oh my god, I wish I never read this book. It was nothing like that, but this is just one of those books that I have a really unpopular opinion on. I feel like everybody absolutely adores this book, and I was expecting to too because I love Abby Jimenez, and I just didn't feel the same about this book as I did with her other books. I don't know what it was. Well, actually I do know what it was. This book is very long for a romance, for one, and it was really slow, especially kind of at the beginning. Like, it was cute. I liked the love interest. He was very like acts of service, which is totally my kind of guy. But I found like it really boring for some reason, and I couldn't put my finger on why. Like, I was not excited to pick this book up when I was reading it. Every time I'd pick it up, I would just like put it down really fast. Like, I would get bored really easily, and I don't know what it was about it. But the thing that frustrated me the most about this book, and it's something that I talked about in the review, was the main character's reasonings for like the third act breakup. It was very emotionally driven. It was very much like just pushing a amazing, perfect, wonderful man, just kicking him to the curb because of her own personal problems and her own personal like mental issues. And don't get me wrong, that's a very like realistic thing that happens in real life, you know, you not being ready to date or whatever, but it's just not something that I want to read in a book because it just is so frustrating to me to see the main character not have a really good reason to just dump such a perfect man. Like, I almost feel like sometimes when this kind of third act breakup is done, it makes you feel like the guy should just go find somebody else that appreciates him for who he is. You know what I mean? Like, it took away from their romance, in my opinion, and it made me just feel like he deserved somebody that cared enough about him to be with him and try and like love him and be grateful for him. Like, I kind of feel like he was taken for granted a little bit in this book, and it was just really frustrating at the end. And I just didn't like the third act breakup, and the third act breakup can literally make or break a book for me. If I don't like the third act breakup, it will definitely take off a star, and if I do like it, then it'll like make it a 5-star. The third act breakup is usually where I make my decision about what kind of star rating I'm going to give the book. And I gave this book 4 stars at first, but I actually lowered it down to a 3 because I just, upon thinking about it, I'm like, I just was so kind of irritated by it at the end, and it was kind of boring at the beginning, so why would I give it a 4 stars when I was just kind of like so-so on it? So like I said, this wasn't a horrible read. I didn't hate it by any means, but it just definitely wasn't like, I didn't feel like that same hype that a lot of other people had when reading this, so this is kind of an unpopular opinion for me, and I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. So the next book was one I read ages ago. I feel like this book is having a resurgence right now because a lot of the really popular booktubers are reading it, but I read it kind of right when it first came out, maybe in like 2020, and I was really hoping to like this. Again, this isn't a book that I absolutely hated. I gave it 3 stars, but it definitely wasn't a book where I was just blown away by it. And it is Lovely War by Julie Berry. So this book was really like, it was good. Okay, so this is one of those books, and I remember saying this in the review video. It's been a while since I read this, but I do remember saying this would make a good movie. Like, I almost feel like I would like the movie of this better than I would like the book. And for some reason I got kind of bored in the book. I didn't really feel for the characters like I wanted to feel for the characters. I don't know what it was. And honestly, I remember getting a little bit bored in this book as well. So that's kind of an unpopular opinion though, because I know so many people cry when they read this and they just think it's so powerful. But for some reason I just didn't feel it, and I don't know why. I feel like this is one of those books that you need like the visuals or something to like really make this book come to life. But there was something about it where I was like, I would love this if this was a movie. But for some reason as a book, it just didn't hit the same, and I don't know why that is. But if you are somebody that is like me and has a really big issue with attention and you don't like slower novels, then maybe rethink this one. You know, obviously it's just one opinion, but I think that was my biggest issue with this. Okay, so this one I actually got rid of a while ago, and it was a Trisha Levenseller. This is another book that's having a resurgence, I feel like. This is a book I read, I think probably in like 2019 or 2020, I'm not really sure. But it's Daughter of the Pirate King. So I really liked The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. She's very much like a fun, quick fantasy author that has like standalone fantasies that are kind of short and kind of fun palette cleansers. But this one is a duology, and the thing that I didn't like about this book was the relationship in this book. It's very like, I wouldn't say it's insta-love, but like kind of. So what happens, I feel like, with this book is the characters like hate each other, right? It's enemies to lovers, and I love enemies to lovers, but it has to be paced right. You know what I mean? Like, enemies to lovers has to have a certain type of pacing to really hit right. And this one just didn't have that. Like, I feel like kind of what happened with this one is it was like they hated each other and hated each other and hated each other. And then boom, like all of a sudden they were like hooking up, like out of the blue, out of nowhere. It like slaps you across the face. You were not expecting it because they had like no flirtation. It was just like all of a sudden they were like really into each other. And you're like, wait, when did this happen? Like, I don't remember them ever having any sort of conversation or anything that would make this happen. I didn't feel a connection to the couple for that reason, because I feel like the pacing was just really, really weird. And so I never ended up reading the second book because I didn't like the couple in the first book. So that was my only issue with this one. It was like insta-lust. I don't know if that's the right way to describe this one, but the pacing of the relationship was just really, really off for a successful enemies to lovers book, you know? And I feel like there's so many enemies to lovers books out there that there are better ones than this, if that makes sense. So, but like I said, I don't hate Trisha Levenseller. I've read books in the past by her that I really liked. It's just this one for some reason didn't work for me. So the next one is a series that I think a lot of people really like, and I was really hoping to like this one. And again, this one is a book that I didn't absolutely hate by any means, but it wasn't like I was obsessed with it. And it was Stalking Jack the Ripper by, who wrote this one? Oh, Carrie Maniscalco. So this book was an interesting reading experience for me because I really liked the main character. The main character in this book is one of my favorite characters. I think she is so unique. I love her very Enneagram 5 part of her personality. She's very like academic. She really likes to learn things. She's very hyper-focused, but has like a hyper-fixation on the human body and all of that kind of thing. Like, I loved her character. But, so this book I feel like followed a very obvious structure for how it was written. It was kind of like how to write a crime novel mystery. And then Carrie Maniscalco took that format and just said, okay, I'm gonna write a crime novel mystery based on this format. And then she wrote it, and it was very just like, I don't know, like she introduced a whole bunch of characters, and then the crime happens, and then the main character's trying to figure out who did it. And so you just have to like go through all the characters that you've met and be like, okay, would it be this person? Would it be this person? Would it be this person? And then you're like, I think it's this person, and then it's that person, and you're like, okay. That's how this book read. It was just so just by the book on how you write a crime mystery novel, and that's why I didn't like it. Like, I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel like there was any cool twists or uncertainty. It was just very much, here you go. Here's a crime mystery with some unique characters. And so I never ended up finishing this series just because I felt like it was a little boring, it was a little predictable, and it just wasn't creative enough for me. Like, the world was creative, but the plot line just wasn't creative. So I never finished it, but it wasn't bad. Like, I would give these a try. It just wasn't something that I was like really, really excited about. Okay, so the next one is kind of an author in general. So this is like the only one where I feel like it's more of an author in general, because I feel like I've kind of read a lot. Well, have I? I've read 2 books by him, I believe. And I just don't understand the hype, I guess, in his books, but I think it's a taste thing. Not necessarily whether he's good or bad, because he's very, very well known for his horror. So I think it's just a me thing. But it's Junjiito. So I read Tomi, and then I also read Shiver, which was another graphic novel by him. And both of them I just was not invested in at all. I felt like they were so, especially Tomi, so drawn out, so repetitive. I literally got so bored reading Tomi. Like, some of the little book stories in Tomi were good and interesting, but I just didn't understand the point of Tomi. I was like, we didn't get anything about Tomi's character. We didn't learn why she does what she does. We didn't get like really anything about Tomi. It was just a whole bunch of little stories about her. And I just wanted a little bit more information about her and who she was and why she did what she did and all of that information. And I just don't feel like we got that. And I was just very, very disappointed in Tomi. And I really wanted to like it because I know it's a very popular just character and, you know, manga in general. I just was so confused. Like I said, some of it was good, but by, I would say, like the 3/4 mark in that manga, I was like really bored and just really tired of reading about Tomi, if I'm being honest. And I just kind of wanted to like DNF it, but I didn't. I kept reading it, but yeah, I just wasn't a huge fan of it. And then Shiver was kind of the same. Like, there were some really good horror stories in Shiver. I think there was like 2 that I really, really liked, but it was a pretty thick manga. And out of the entire manga, I only found like 2 to be somewhat scary. And the rest, I was just kind of like, okay. And then I would go to the next one and be like, okay. It just, they didn't scare me that much. And I don't know if I'm just not somebody that gets scared very easily. Maybe that's the case, but I just don't find Junji Ito's writing to be that horrific. So the next one is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. So this got really, really popular again, I would say a year or 2 ago. I think I read this in about 2021, I'm gonna guess. But this book is about a man whose grandfather started this big theme park. Think Disneyland. It's like a Disneyland amusement park story. And his grandfather started Disneyland. And the girl in this book works as like an Imagineer. Do you guys remember Imagineers? You know, the people like behind the scenes. She kind of worked as that person at this Disneyland. The main guy, to get his inheritance from his grandpa, has to change Disneyland around and like make it successful again or something like that. So he ends up like trying to get the main character to help him do that. That's kind of, I think, what the premise is from what I remember. But this book, I wanted to like this so much. And like I said, I didn't hate it, but I was hoping to give it like 5 stars because I'm a Disneyland girl. Like, I love Disneyland. I'm a Disney adult, which I know people have so many opinions on Disney adults, but I'm one of them and I am not ashamed of it. So I was really hoping to like this, and I just didn't love the characters in this for some reason. I felt like the characters were so stereotypically Grumpy Sunshine to the point where it almost felt forced. But then sometimes these characters wouldn't fit what the author made them. Like she really wanted this girl to be a sunshine, right? She wore her summer dresses and was just so like happy and peppy and everything that you would picture a stereotypical sunshine character to be. But then she would have these moments where I'm like, wait, that doesn't match her character that the author like made for her. Like, I feel like I'm kind of thrown off by it. Like, I couldn't picture her the way that the author was trying to make me picture her. And then I kind of also felt like their relationship, like, you know when hate to love doesn't hit because you kind of feel like the characters don't mesh? Like, Grumpy Sunshine can work and I really like it when it works, but sometimes the characters almost feel too different that they don't mesh well together. Like, they don't match. It's like sometimes opposites attract, but then sometimes they don't because they're like too different. That's kind of, I feel like, what happened with this book. The characters just felt too Grumpy Sunshine. They felt too different, and I just didn't feel like they would work out in real life, if that makes sense. Which has happened to me in other books as well. Like, that feeling where you're like, this couple's cute in this book, but they're not gonna last long after this book finishes. You know what I mean? Like, they'll last 3 months and then they'll be over. That's kind of, I remember how I felt with this book a little bit. It wasn't horrible. Like, it was a fun, like, premise, and I loved it kind of taking place in, like, Disneyland, but, like, it wasn't my favorite romance by any means because the characters and the couple just didn't really quite hit for me. So the next book is a book that I read via audio, and this one is so popular. This got really popular last year, and I read it last year, and I just didn't love this. And it's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So this book, again, wasn't a book I hated. I gave it 3 stars, but it was definitely forgettable for me. And these characters weren't actually supposed to be completely likable. They were supposed to be very real characters, which I appreciate. If you can do like real, morally gray, kind of unlikable characters in a very real way, I will appreciate it. And in that regard, I did kind of like it. This book wasn't one of those books that has like an overarching plot line, right? Where it's like, there's 2 characters and then they're trying to do a thing and then there's a conflict and then it kind of goes down and then there's a resolution. Like, it wasn't really like that, which I feel like I personally really like in books. I like kind of like a main arc in a book. I like it when there's like a conflict, and I like it when there's a resolution. I like it when there's like a main point to be had in the book. Like, you read the book for a reason and you kind of get that reason at the end. You know what I mean? Like, I like books like that. I don't like open endings. I don't like kind of vague books without too much purpose. And I'm not saying this book didn't have purpose. It did, but it was more like this, like conflict, resolution, conflict, resolution, conflict, resolution, conflict, resolution, conflict, resolution, and then the book was over. So it felt like a soap opera. Like, you know how when you watch soap operas over years and years and years and years, and there's just a whole bunch of little conflicts all throughout, and then the soap opera ends because it's not popular anymore, and you're like, okay. That's kind of how this book felt. There wasn't like an overarching thing. I mean, maybe a little bit, but it just kind of felt like you were just kind of reading a soap opera. And that's kind of why I didn't like this book. I need that in a book. I don't know, it's just a personal taste thing, just that overarching like story arc. I just get a little bit, I think, bored when I read books like this. Like, I just need something that's really pushing me along to the very, very end. The next one is a very popular one, and I have a theory. You guys are going to hate me for this, but I have a theory that people don't actually like this book as much as they say that they like it. I think they feel like they need to like it because they love the movie so much and they have such a strong connection to the movie and how the movie makes them feel that they want to love this book, but they don't actually like it. And that's Alice in Wonderland, or Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. So I've always been an Alice in Wonderland girl. Like, when I was a kid, it was my favorite movie. That movie and The Little Mermaid were my 2 favorite Disney movies. And I loved Alice in Wonderland so much that I actually made my mom call me Alice for a short time because I wanted to be her. And so I was really excited to read this because I'm like, I have to like this book. Like, I have to. Like, I love the movie. I have to like this book. And I would say, like, I liked maybe the first 10 pages, and then I started getting so bored in this book. Like, there's something so nonsensical about this book that it makes it so tiring to read. Like, there's not really a story arc here at all. It's just Lewis Carroll being as random and nonsensical that he can possibly be. Do you know what this book feels like? It felt like you were reading a really, 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 really long synopsis of somebody's nonsensical dream, and you're just sitting there going, okay, like, okay. I did not like it. The only fun part about reading this book was highlighting the parts that were directly pulled from the book for the movie, and I really, really liked that because I was like, oh, that's from the movie, and it kind of gave me a sense of nostalgia when I would read those lines. That was the only thing I really liked about this. I gave it 2 stars. I'll always be a fan of the movie, but the book, didn't like it. Okay, so this next one, I hate this book so much. One Day in December by Elsie Silver. So this is one of those books I feel like so many people love, and I always see this book pop up randomly, and whenever I see people reading it, they always love it. And I feel like this book keeps having like these small little resurgences, and I'm like, why does this book keep resurging? I don't understand. I just didn't like this book at all. This book to me felt so painfully toxic, I couldn't handle it. So basically this is about a girl who sees this man on a bus, right? Literally 5 seconds. She sees this guy and she's like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to him. He's so hot. And he sees her for literally 5 seconds, and they want to talk to each other. They want to meet, but the bus drives off and they're never able to meet. So she spends the rest of this book, it's 10 years, obsessed with this boy that she saw on the bus for 5 seconds. But what she finds out is her best friend starts dating this guy that she saw on the bus. And her friend is with this guy for 10 years. And she spends 10 years obsessing over this stupid boyfriend of her best friend because he was the guy she saw on the bus. I can't handle it. Like, the fact that this chick could not move on from this man for 10 years and they never told her friend that he was the busboy. The entire 10 years that they were together, they never told her. Do you know what this reminds me of? That toxic girl code thing that I feel like is really common in like high school, maybe college, where somebody will see somebody and be like, look at that guy, he's really hot. And it's almost like they make claim on that man. And so nobody else can like go after that man, right? Because they saw him first and they've kind of made claim on him. And if anybody else in the friend group decides that they kind of think he's hot too and would like to maybe try to go after him as well, they can't, because the first girl made claim on him because she saw him first. That's kind of the vibes this book gives. And then they're gonna have like this thing behind her friend's back for 10 years and they're not gonna tell her friend that that was the busboy, and her friend's not gonna know until like the very end of the book. And for some reason the friend didn't care, which I thought was really weird, which more power to you for not caring. But then like I would be so hurt like if one of my friends came up to me and was like, I actually Travis is actually a guy that I saw once and he saw me and he had a big crush on me and I had a big crush on him, but we couldn't pursue it because then you guys got together, but we've kind of had a thing for each other for like the last 10 years. I would be like, what? And I'm just gonna spoil it, okay? So I'm just gonna spoil this book. If you want to read it, but I'm gonna spoil it. They finally get together at the very, very end of this book. And it's literally like the last page that they get together finally and then have a first kiss and then like the book is over and you're like, all of that for like 2 seconds of like getting together finally and then the book is over. It was so underwhelming. I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. I don't even know why I gave it 2 stars. I probably should have given it 1 star, but I did not like this book at all. It made me cringe thinking about like why somebody would do this to their best friend and like why you would make claim on a man that you literally met for like 5 minutes. No, she didn't even meet him. She saw him. I could rant forever on this. Anyways, okay. So the next one is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. So this is one where I gave Emily Henry 1 chance and I don't want to like completely cut her off. I got rid of some of her older books because I had like almost all of her books that I found in like, you know, little book boxes and little libraries. But I ended up getting rid of those ones. And I think Emily Henry for me is one of those authors where it's not like an auto buy thing. Like I'll try Emily Henry out if the synopsis sounds interesting to me, but I don't think I'm gonna like every book Emily Henry writes, if that makes sense. So she's like a synopsis author for me, not like an auto buy author where I'll probably like anything she writes. So I ended up getting rid of all of the books that I owned by her except for one, which is Happy Place. And that's the one book I feel like by her that I think that I could like based on the synopsis. So I'm gonna read that one and give her another try. But Book Lovers I absolutely hated. I hated the main character. I hated her sister. There was like a romance in it that felt like a fever dream. I feel like Charlie, the main love interest, like I didn't know anything about him. He was just kind of in like the background of this story and we were supposed to feel so much for their relationship and I just did not care at all. Like I remember by the end I'm like, I don't even like know Charlie. Like he just doesn't feel like a real character. Like at the end it was all this like, you know, they're finally getting together and everything and I'm like, why do I not care? Like I don't care about Charlie whatsoever. He feels like a background character that just is kind of in there, but like not a main character, just like a major background character. That's what I felt like Charlie was in this book. And I'm just like, and then I felt like her sister had really weird motives for some of the things that she did. And the main character was not how she said that she was. Like the author said, this main character is a shark. She is like a career woman that will step on all the little people to get what she wants, and like she's like this major like cutthroat career woman. But then throughout the entire book she did not act that way. She acted completely different. She just like was kind of a soft, like bent over backwards for everybody and was not how the author told us that she was. So her character didn't match what we were told, if that makes sense. Sort of like the fine print. It was kind of similar to that. And I don't like that. I don't like it when authors tell you a character is a certain way, but then they like make the character act differently and it just doesn't match with what you are supposed to believe about them. And I sort of feel like that's what happened with the main character in this book. I just wasn't a fan of this book. I got really bored in it. And I feel like too, Emily Henry's one of those authors where it's like you either like everyone has a different favorite for Emily Henry. Like I had so many people say, no, you have to read beach read. And then some people are like, no, you have to read People You Meet on Vacation. And then some people are like, no, you have to read Happy Place. Like, everyone has their favorite Emily Henry, but there's not like a consensus on which one is the best. It's just like whatever one fits you and your personality, if that makes sense. That's how I feel like Emily Henry's books are. So we're gonna read Happy Place at some point. Hopefully I like it better, but yeah, Book Lovers was not one that I liked. Anyways, that is it for this video. Those are popular books that I didn't like, popular books that I felt were just overhyped a little bit. And based on my reading tastes, this is why I didn't like them. And if you have similar reading tastes to me, then you may feel similarly to these books, so it might be something to think about before picking them up. So yeah, that is basically it for this video. Hopefully this was helpful. I hope I wasn't too negative. I think some of these books I did get a little negative because you can't help it when you make these videos. You know what I mean? But like I said, none of these authors are bad. It was just the specific book that I read by them I didn't like, but that doesn't mean the rest of their books are bad, if that makes sense. So anyways, that is it, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.